Well, hello, everyone. I'm Jeanne Sheehen. I'm the senior senator from New Hampshire, and I'm so pleased to be able to join all of you at this really challenging time in New Hampshire and America's history, and actually the history for the world as we're all facing this coronavirus pandemic. So I hope that all of you who are tuned in are safe and healthy, and that you're following all of the suggestions for social distancing and washing your hands and wearing a mask in public and staying at home. And I hope you're checking in on friends and neighbors, family, to make sure that all of the people in your circle are doing okay and know that somebody cares about you. You know, this is a challenging time for all of us, and it's made even more difficult because what we're hearing is that there are people out there who are perpetrating frauds and scams against our citizens. It's particularly difficult at this time because they're also going after older Americans. And, you know, frauds and scams are terrible at any time. But when they're at a time like this, when there's so much anxiety and concern, and people are worried about their health and their concerns about people losing jobs, it just is particularly horrendous to have people who would perpetrate those kinds of scams against our citizens. So I'm really pleased that this is an opportunity for us to figure out what we should be paying attention to. And we have some experts who are joining us today who are going to give presentations, talk about what we should be aware of as we're getting phone calls and mail so that we don't get taken in by some of these very effective scammers. Let me just introduce our guests on the call, and I'm going to read so I make sure I get their titles correct. First, we have on the phone Colleen Tessler, who is the Senior Project Manager with the Federal Trade Commission. Thank you, Colleen, for joining us. We also have Brandon Darrad, who is the Senior Assistant Attorney General with the New Hampshire Department of Justice, so he is a state official. We have Kevin McKeon, who is also on the phone, who is the District Liaison with the Internal Revenue Service. And we have Brian Evans, who is an inspector with the United States Postal Inspector Service. And finally, who's Todd Fahey, who is the New Hampshire State Director for AARP, is going to be acting as MC for today's event. You know, as I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, it reminded me this will be the 10th of these forums that we've held around New Hampshire. Of course, all of the past ones have been in a location and people have been able to join us in the audience. We can't do that today, so this is really our first virtual event. But I got something in the mail this week that reminded me just how important it is for us to be aware of the kind of mail and the kind of phone calls that we're receiving. And I'm going to hold this up in hopes that you can see it, because this is a letter that came in the mail. So Brian, you can talk about these, I'm sure, as you're talking about what to look for. This said in a very prominent location in the envelope that it was the final notice. And it's trying to get me and my husband to take out a warranty on our house on any repairs that need to be done. And it looks very official. It says, please respond by a date certain. It has the fact that this is going to be our final notice, our last chance. And then it has, of course, the customer ID number and the name of the company. But the reason I knew it was a fake is because it's got the wrong mortgage company holding the mortgage on my house. So when we get things like this in the mail, we've got to examine them very carefully so we know what's real and what's an effort to take our money and to scam us and engage us in a fraud. So I'm really pleased that we have these experts on today who can tell us what to look for and what to be aware of. And again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the experts. And I look forward to hearing all of the presentations. So Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Senator. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and with these great experts. AARP is very focused as an organization on preventing frauds and scams of the type that you speak of that have really plagued people around the nation. In a nutshell, millions of people are defrauded out of billions of dollars. And if there was some calculation about frauds per minute or frauds per second, the numbers would be astounding to people to hear. So we are an organization that frequently works with groups like the FTC and the Attorney General's Office and the IRS and the postal inspectors, and obviously with your office as well. And thank you for your leadership, most recently on helping combat the scourge of robocalls. So I personally am a New Hampshire resident and a native. Very, very much thank you for that, because my life is slightly more peaceful for your leadership on that. So you're going to hear from great experts today, and I guess just to tee it up a little bit, there's a few things. When we talk about scams and scam artists, often we think about art as something to be admired or emulated, or sometimes we say that something is artistic. There is no beauty or nobility in what these people do. But there is artistry in it. And it's the same type of thing that the senator speaks of when she says you get a very official notice, and if you're not clever or thoughtful enough or just attentive enough to look and see that the notice is the wrong mortgage company, you might become a victim of the fraud. And so as we go through this, I would just leave you with this thought. These people, these fraudsters, try to get you in the ether. We call it the ether. As an organization. And the ether is a heightened emotional state. It might be an emotional state prompted by the emotions of love and desire for companionship. It might be an emotional state driven by greed. It might be an emotional state by fear or urgency that these scam artists, and there is a place in the netherworld for them, particularly in the time of a global pandemic, but I digress. And these are the types of things that you need to understand, because the reason people befall and get ensnared in these terrible things is because of how they are perpetuated. So it is seriously my pleasure to have the people on the front line of this, some of the finest organizations and people addressing this on behalf of the citizens of New Hampshire and others. And make no mistake, there are thousands of people in New Hampshire who lose millions of dollars every year. And you're going to hear what those things look like and why they lose them. So why they lose their money. If I could, we'll kick off with Colleen Tressler. And as Senator Shaheen said, she is with the FTC. She's been in that role for more than 35 years. She's taken an especially active role in helping to educate consumers about issues that affect their financial well-being. She is currently coordinating the FTC's consumer messaging efforts on the COVID crisis. So we truly are hearing from directly from the sources, and it's my pleasure to turn this over to Colleen. Colleen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Todd. And thank you, Senator Shaheen, for hosting this event and for inviting the Federal Trade Commission to participate. And hello, everyone who's tuning in. One thing we know from all health emergencies and natural disasters is this, that the scammers will follow the headlines. They take advantage of what may be occurring in the news to find new ways to get people to part with their money or their personal financial information. We saw this with the anthrax scare, Zika, Ebola, bird flu, and SARS. We're now seeing it with the coronavirus. Based on our experience, we knew early on that scammers were going to use this health crisis to play on people's fears to perpetrate a whole slew of old and new scams. The FTC is very interested in hearing from all of you about the types of COVID-19 related scams you're encountering. Please report them to ftc.gov/complaint. Your complaints help us stop rip-off artists, scammers, and fraudsters. The FTC's aggressive law enforcement efforts put the bad guys out of business, and our vigorous consumer education campaigns empower people just like you to make well-informed buying decisions and recognize frauds and scams. Since January 1, the FTC has received more than 55,000 COVID-related complaints. The total loss exceeds $40 million, and the median fraud loss is $458. Now let's get into some of the scams we're seeing and what you can do to protect yourself and others. First are fake treatments and cures. Everything from miracle cures and vaccine offers and home testing kits to scams that target people on Medicare. But the takeaway tip is this: ignore online and telephone offers for vaccinations, tests, or cures. As you know, at this point, there are no vaccines or cures for COVID-19, so you know that any claim to the contrary is false. Right now, scammers are hawking bogus products to prevent, treat, or cure the coronavirus. If you see that type of ad, stop and think to yourself, if there's actually been a medical breakthrough, are you really going to hear about it for the first time from an ad or sales pitch on Facebook or something that you get in a text message or an email? The answer is clearly no. So train yourself and others to just ignore those types of false ads. And if you're on Medicare, you might get calls, emails, or see ads that claim to give you special access, either to testing kits or treatments. But that's not how Medicare works. Medicare representatives will never call you to offer special access or to put you in line for a test or treatment. Anyone who claims to be acting on behalf of Medicare and makes that type of offer is a scammer. Scammers also are sending emails and text messages that are trying to get your personal information, your money, or to load malicious software known as malware on your computer and other devices. We've also seen that scammers have bought up lots of domain names that include coronavirus and even include misspellings of the word. But if you visit one of those websites, they'll also put malware on your device. So here's the tip. Don't click on links in emails or text messages from sources you don't know. It could download a virus onto your computer or other device. And because of that, you want to make sure that the anti-malware and antivirus software on your computer or device is up to date. Next, let's talk about robocalls. Scammers have been quick to adjust their pitches to try to take advantage of people's fears about the pandemic, offering fake cures, prevention solutions, test kits, special access for Medicare recipients, like we said, health insurance, cleaning supplies, and the list goes on. But they're also tailoring their regular robocall scams. So we've seen some Social Security Administration robocalls that now reference the coronavirus, telling people that their Social Security number has been suspended due to suspicious activity related to COVID-19. Here's what you can do to avoid falling victim. Simply hang up on illegal robocallers. Then block the number that appeared on your caller ID using the blocking service on your phone or the one provided by your carrier. Then report the call to the FTC at ftc.gov/complaint. And an important thing to remember with robocalls, don't press any numbers on your phone. The recording might say that pressing a number will let you speak to a live operator or remove you from their call list, but it's more likely to lead to more robocalls instead. So when you pick up the phone and are met with a robocall, just hang up. Now I'd like to turn attention to grandparent scams. In these scams, fraudsters pose as panicked grandchildren in trouble, calling or sending messages, urging you to wire money immediately. They'll say they need cash to help with an emergency, like paying a hospital bill or needing to leave a foreign country. They pull at your heartstrings so they can trick you into sending money before you realize it's a scam. In these days of coronavirus concerns, Their lives can be particularly compelling, but we all need to save our money for the real family emergencies. So how can we avoid grandparent scams or family emergency scams if someone is sending a message or a call claiming to be a grandchild or other family member or friend desperate for money? Resist the urge to act immediately, no matter how dramatic the story is. Verify the caller's identity. Ask questions that a stranger couldn't possibly answer. Call a phone number for your family member or friend that you know to be genuine. Check the story out with someone else in your family or circle of friends, even if you've been told to keep it a secret. And don't send cash, gift cards, or money transfers. Once the scammer gets the money, it's gone. And now I'd like to say a little bit something about the stimulus payments concerning residents of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. I want to bring your attention to a consumer alert the FTC issued earlier this month after hearing reports from a number of state attorney general's offices that some nursing homes and assisted living facilities were telling residents and patients who were on Medicaid that they needed to sign over their stimulus payments to the facility. That is wrong. And if that's happened to you or a loved one, you should contact your state attorney general and ask the facility to give back the payment. Under the CARES Act, the stimulus payment is treated like a tax credit, and as a result, it's not considered a resource for purposes of federal government programs like Medicaid. As a result, the nursing home or other facility can't seize the stimulus payment simply because the resident is on Medicaid. If that's happened to you or to a loved one, please, again, report it to your state attorney general and then to the FTC. In closing, I'd like to encourage you to stay informed just like you're doing today. One way we can all help each other is by sharing the good, trustworthy resources when we find them. You can keep up to date with the latest scams by signing up for the FTC's consumer alerts. Visit ftc.gov/subscribe to do so. And here are 3 key resources for you to share. To know the latest about the pandemic, go to coronavirus.gov. That will take you straight to the CDC. To learn more about scams and how you can avoid them, visit our site at ftc.gov/coronavirus. And bookmark this site to check back for updates because we're always putting out new information. And to find out what else is going on across the federal government, along with lots of resources from other agencies, some of which you'll hear from today, go to usa.gov/coronavirus. Thanks so much for your time and attention, and thank you again to Senator Shaheen for having us. Thank you.
Oh, Colleen, that was great. Thank you so much. So again, ftc.gov is your website. And to underscore a couple points that Colleen just said before we go to our next speaker, key information and good information is critical to making good decisions. And one thing, to echo something that Colleen said, it's important to resist the urge to act immediately. That, again, is the ether, to encourage people to act in haste. And as most of us know, acting hasty or in an impetuous way isn't always the best way. And certainly in these situations, if it seems too good to be true, if you think you need to act and look a little bit further, definitely take advantage of the resources that Colleen spoke of. So next up is Brandon Garrod, and as the senator said, he is a senior assistant attorney general at the New Hampshire Attorney General's office. He is the bureau chief of the Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau. Essentially, I would affectionately call him New Hampshire's top fraud cop. So again, hearing from the top fraud cop is a good thing because you'll hear the perspective of one who sees this on a daily basis. And unfortunately, probably knows these scams all too well. So with that, Brandon, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Todd. And I want to say thank you to Senator Shaheen for giving the Department of Justice the opportunity to participate in this very important event. I am the Bureau Chief of the Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau here at the New Hampshire Department of Justice. But before I took on this role, I served as an Assistant Attorney General that was in charge of investigating and prosecuting financial exploitation of New Hampshire's elderly citizens. And through that experience, I was fortunate to be able to travel the state and meet with New Hampshire's elderly citizens and talk about scams, the scams that they were seeing, what scams were working, what scams were obviously not working, and to try to get a feel for how widespread this problem is. And the thing that was immediately apparent when I started going, town to town and county to county, speaking with different groups of seniors, is that no matter where you are in the state, no matter who you are in the state, no matter who you are in the country, scams affect all of us. And there's really no way to escape them. The best way to protect yourself against scams is through educational outreach like the event that we're all here to participate in today. Education really is our best weapon against scammers, because the more that the general population knows about the most recent scams, the more that everybody has the ability to identify some common characteristics of scams that I'll talk about in a few minutes, the better equipped you'll be when you find yourself in that high pressure situation with a scammer on the phone or with a threatening letter in the mail, to be able to recognize it as a scam and be able to know, what steps you can take to make sure that that scammer is not able to separate you from any of your hard-earned money. So in the time that I have spent working on combating scams here in New Hampshire, I've really been able to break down scams into two different broad categories of scams that I'd like to talk to you about today. And the first I like to group into a category of scams that I call urgency scams. And urgency scams are the most common scams that you hear about on a day-to-day basis. And they have three common red flags to them that I'd like to talk about with you today to better equip you to recognize these urgency scams, no matter what shape or form they might take. And so the first red flag for any urgency scam is that you will receive either a call, a text, an email, a letter, or some other type of communication that is asking you to give away either money or personal identifying information. And personal identifying information, I mean your date of birth, your social security number, the last four digits of your bank account, maybe even your address or your home telephone number. All of this information is extremely valuable to scammers. In some cases, it's more valuable than money because it enables them to continue to perpetrate their scams. So that's the first red flag. Anytime you receive a letter or a phone call or an email and the person on the other end is asking you for money or for personal identifying information, that should be a red flag to you. Unless somebody is in person and you know them, you know the person, you know who you're talking to, you should resist the urge to send money or provide personal identifying information. So that's the first red flag. And the second red flag of these urgency scams is where the name urgency scams come from, which is that the scammer will do his or her best to create a false sense of urgency to get you to hand over whatever it is they're seeking. And this was touched on a little bit by prior presenter, but I'd like to expand on it a little bit more. What these scammers really try to do is put you in a position where you feel like if you don't give them what they're asking for, that something terrible will happen. And you heard a little bit about the grandparent scam. In that case, what you're told is if you don't send money to the scammer, then your beloved grandchild is going to have to spend a night in jail. So that's one example of that urgency. And what it does is it takes away your ability to think rationally because you're too concerned with the potential negative consequence of not sending the money. Another great example, we just got through tax season here in the United States, is the IRS scam. Scammers will call and threaten that a police officer is going to arrest you unless you pay back taxes to the IRS by the end of the phone call. And they'll tell you, your neighbors are going to see, your friends are going to see. And for some, particularly elderly citizens, that fear of embarrassment, of being arrested, of having the police show up at their home, that sense of urgency is enough to overcome their sense of reason and really think about, whether this is a scam or not. So those are two examples of the second red flag, which is urgency. So you have a request for money or personal identifying information, which is one. You have a sense of urgency trying to get you to act quickly without thinking. And then the third and final red flag that's common to these urgency scams is that the scammer will ask you for an unusual source of payment. They'll almost never ask you to send them a check. Instead, what they'll do is they'll ask you to go to the store and purchase several $1,000s worth of gift cards, and to call them back and scratch off the numbers on the back and read them the numbers of the gift cards. Another very common scam uses bitcoins or money wiring, all really uncommon types of payments. That's the third red flag that you should be aware of. So if you have those three things, the urgency, the request for money or personal identifying information, and a strange source of payment, those are all red flags that what you're dealing with is a scam, and you should terminate the phone call immediately. Call your local police department, call the Attorney General's office, speak to a family member, speak to a loved one, speak to a friend, talk to anybody. Just separate yourself from the caller and bring in somebody else to help you think rationally about what's going on. And I want to bring up a recent example. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but this is a very common scam that is being perpetrated in New Hampshire right now. This is a text message that we at the Attorney General's office have received multiple complaints about this week, where the scammer says that they have hacked into the person's computer or phone, and they've used the webcam to record the person doing embarrassing things on their computer. And they threaten, if within 24 hours the person doesn't send them $1,000 through Bitcoin, they're going to send that video to all of their friends and family member and embarrass the person. And they even, if you can see, include a scan code right in the text message. That's where you send the Bitcoin to. So we've had multiple complaints about this in the last few weeks in New Hampshire. This is a not great, but this is the most recent example of an urgency type scam that's prevalent in the state of New Hampshire that has all three of those red flags that I talked about previously. So those are urgency scams. And with the time I have left, I'd like to talk to you about the second category of scams that we've done a lot of work on, which I tend to call long-term scams. And these don't have the sense of urgency. What they have is a scammer really puts in long-term effort into luring you into a relationship with them. Oftentimes a romantic relationship. And the most common example you see is it's called the romance scam. And rather than the urgency, what the scammer does in this case is really take the time to get to know you, to create a false identity that you get to know, and to build a fake relationship with you so that they have your sense of trust. Usually what will happen is through Facebook or social media or sometimes online dating platforms, you'll just get what seems like a harmless message from somebody who's interested in chatting. And then over the course of days or weeks, or sometimes we've seen even a month, the messages become more and more romantic. They tell you everything you want to hear, that they love you, that you're beautiful, that they want to spend the rest of their lives with you, that they can't wait to see you. They can't see you immediately, though, because every single time the person just happens to be in another country working on some project that they have to finish before they can come home, or something to that extent. And they'll keep saying, they'll set a date. This is the date I'm coming home. I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to meet your kids. And it really plays on the loneliness of some of the single senior citizens in the state. And then what happens inevitably is, when that big day comes that the person is supposed to fly over from Europe or fly down from Canada, there's some terrible accident or there's some catastrophe. The person is arrested. The person is hospitalized. The person has a construction accident and can't finish their project. And they start asking for money in order to pay off whatever debt they've accumulated in order to get to their loved one, to get to you. And this is just another example of never send money to somebody that you have not met, that somebody that you don't know, somebody that you don't trust. And, this romance scam has really resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars of New Hampshire citizens' hard-earned money of leaving this country and ending up in the pockets of scammers. And it leaves people emotionally and financially devastated. So I see that my time here is almost up. I would just like to conclude by saying, we are all in this pandemic together. We are all combating these scammers together. Talk to each other. stay in communication, share the information you get from this group today with your friends, with your loved ones, and together, hopefully, eventually, we can overcome the epidemic of scammers, and we can have a little bit more trust in our phones and our emails again. Thank you very much, Senator Sheehen, for having me.
Brendan, thank you very much. Where can people go if they want to contact you? Is there a number to contact your office in New Hampshire? A website?
There is. So the best way to contact the Department of Justice is through the Consumer Protection Hotline. That's a hotline where you can leave a voice message 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the number is 1-888-468-4454. Thanks,
Brendan. Good messages there about urgency scams and long-term scams. And I guess the other subsidiary message is that you are not powerless people, right? We're not powerless. The power comes from when you're not aware of what's happening. But the more educated you become about these scams, as Colleen has discussed and Brandon has discussed, then the better off you'll be, and the better off you'll be to protect yourself. So, yes, there's artistry in it, and they are coming at us in many different ways through various channels, but we can fight back. So, Brendan, thank you. So with that, we'll turn it over to Kevin McKeon. Kevin McKeon, as the senator said, is the district liaison for New Hampshire at the Internal Revenue Service. He works with the New Hampshire congressional delegation, our representatives and senators in Washington, on all matters regarding the IRS, including tax law changes and IRS policies and procedures. Kevin has over 20 years of experience with the IRS in various capacities in the New England area. And because people are so terrified of the IRS, scammers frequently use the IRS as a mechanism for getting your money. So with that, I will turn it over to Kevin McKeon. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Todd, and thank you very much for Senator Shaheen for inviting the IRS onto this program. Hello, everyone. What I will be talking about today is the economic impact payments, or the stimulus payments, they've been called, and also how to avoid scams relating to the economic impact payments. So the IRS has worked as quickly as possible to implement important tax-related provisions in the CARES Act, especially the economic impact payments to help millions of Americans through these challenging times that we're in. In fact, many Americans started seeing payments showing up in their bank accounts 14 days after the CARES Act was approved. So the IRS has really been working around the clock to try and get this money out there to those who need it. And so far, more than 150 million economic impact payments worth $257 billion have been delivered, most by direct deposit and some by paper check. In addition, we recently began sending 4 million payments by prepaid debit card. And this Treasury-sponsored EIP card will help provide money efficiently and securely to those for whom we don't have bank account information on file. The vast majority of people do not need to take any action to receive an economic impact payment. And the IRS is calculating and automatically sending the payments out to those who are eligible. But for anyone needing help filing, but are concerned about visiting a tax professional or local community organization for tax help at this time, these payments will be available throughout the rest of 2020. Again, many people who don't normally file a return will not need to file a tax return to receive the economic impact payment, or EIP, including senior citizens and others receiving Social Security retirement, survivors, or disability benefits, and railroad retirement. Those folks will automatically receive the $1,200 payment. 2 groups of other people were added to the list who will receive automatic payments, and that is those whose only income is from supplemental security income, or SSI payments, and the second group, people receiving disability compensation, pension, or survivor benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs and who did not file a return for 2018 or 2019. But Many other people who don't normally file a tax return won't receive an economic impact payment from us unless they take action. And that's because we don't have their information on file. These groups include those who don't earn enough to have a tax filing requirement. Among these non-filers, IRS is especially concerned about reaching underserved communities, people who have no income and the homeless, and also households where English isn't the primary language. We want non-filers to know that it's easy to send us the necessary information. They can use a new web tool that we've developed for them to register for the economic impact payment. The non-filer enter payment tool was developed in partnership between the IRS and the Free File Alliance and provides a free and easy registration option for people with too little income to file a return and others who normally don't file. And this feature is available only on irs.gov, and users should look on that website for non-filers, enter payment info here to take them directly to the tool. Using this tool, people can provide a few pieces of basic information, including Social Security number, name, address, and dependents. IRS will use this information to confirm eligibility and calculate and send an economic impact payment. The IRS also has developed another web tool called Get My Payment, which helps recipients of the economic impact payments track the status of their payment. And this new tool is similar to the Where's My Refund tool, familiar to many taxpayers, and it's on irs.gov, of course. The Get My Payment tool shows the date when taxpayers can expect to receive their economic impact payment. Now I'd like to talk about avoiding economic impact payment scams. Be on the lookout for scams that use the economic impact payment and other IRS-related relief efforts to the coronavirus as a cover to steal your information and money. The IRS has seen scammers trying to prey on vulnerable taxpayers who are unaware of how the payments will reach them. If you have questions, rely on the IRS for accurate information. Visit irs.gov/EIPFAQ for answers on frequently asked questions about the economic impact payment. Keep in mind that scammers are using email, phone calls, text messages, websites, and social media sites to steal your money or personal information. So watch out for common tricks. First, the IRS will not email or call you to verify or ask for your financial information so that you can get a payment. Also, if someone demands money from you to get an economic payment, take that as a red flag. You don't need to make a payment to receive an economic impact payment in exchange. Don't fall for any of it. Note that in most cases, the IRS will issue the payments without you having to take any special steps. The IRS continues to work to protect you, and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division is prioritizing scams that exploit economic impact payments and the coronavirus. But we can't do it alone. You are still the main line of defense against scams. We realize there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we want you to stay safe, including when it comes to your tax security. So stay alert and stay informed. For the IRS updates on coronavirus relief, visit irs.gov/coronavirus. Now, our sister organization, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, they are anticipating that criminals will engage in various scams and schemes in attempts to intercept the economic impact payments and or steal sensitive taxpayer information during these challenging times. Taxpayers will likely encounter fraudulent web pages or social media-based communication and or receive a phishing email with a PH text messages or other communications which claim to be from the IRS asking for sensitive personal information from taxpayers or payments in order to receive their EIP. In some cases, scammers may use these communications to try to install malicious programs on the victim's phone or computer. So do not follow any embedded links or open any attached files from these scam emails. In order to avoid falling victim to fraudulent individuals either impersonating or claiming to represent IRS, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration offers the following tips. IRS will generally first contact people by mail, not by phone, about tax-related matters. Second, if the IRS does contact you by telephone, they will not insist on any prepayment using an iTunes card, gift card, prepaid debit card, money order, or wire transfer in order to receive EIP. The IRS also will never request personal or financial information by email, text, letter, or any social media. Based on historical trends in illicit activity, the Treasury Inspector General wants to remind all taxpayers to avoid being victimized of an EIP Treasury check scam, to check on the status of your economic impact payment, visit irs.gov and click on the Get My Payment tool. Only use the website irs.gov. Do not use any other websites or services that claim to be able to process your EIP or act as an intermediary between you and the IRS. Similarly, again, do not click on links in email that purport to take you to the IRS website. The best practice is to manually type irs.gov into your web browser. Anyone claiming to be from the IRS and offering to process your EIP is impersonating the IRS. Do not share any personal information or financial information with these scammers. Please report this info to the Treasury Inspector General on their website at tips/tigta.gov or their toll-free number 800-366-4484. That's 800-366-4484. And do not share your personal information with anyone, whether claiming to be from the IRS or some other business or agency offering to assist you with your EIP. Payments will come directly from the IRS, either through direct deposit to your bank or paper U.S. Treasury checks or on the debit card.
Thank you, Kevin.
Share
sorry about that, Kevin. Can we got to wrap up a little because we have to get to Brian Evans still, and we can. But go ahead if you want to have a couple of closing comments so we can keep moving through the program.
Absolutely.
Please. Okay. I know you have a ton of information, so.
Okay. So basically, if you need information about the economic impact payments, go to the FAQs on irs.gov. Beware, there are scammers out there, and you can report them at tips/tigta.gov. Thank you very much, and thank you, Senator Sheehan.
Kevin, thank you. One last question. There was so much information in there because people do use the IRS because of the fear it causes. I mean, so all that you spoke of, people should go to the irs.gov and they can find all those links like the tips and the FAQs and everything. Is that fair, Kevin?
That's correct. Click on the coronavirus tax relief and they'll take them to that site.
And there are also phone numbers on there as well. Excellent. Thank you very, very much. So with that, we are going to turn to the Inspector General with the U.S. Postal Service, with the U.S. Postal Inspector Service. It's Brian Evans. This is a federal law enforcement agency tasked with investigating violations of federal law pertaining to the U.S. mail. Brian has served in his role for over 17 years investigating U.S. mail crimes and giving presentations to the public on how they can prevent themselves from becoming victims of U.S. mail crimes. So it's great to hear from him. And I'm hoping, Brian, you can talk a little bit about when we talk about not only being educated about spotting fraud so that you don't fall prey to them, If there's an opportunity to use your office to have mails intercepted, once you put something in the mail to somebody, it would be nice to know about that, because that is something we don't want people to be in that situation. But as Brandon said and others said, once the money's gone, it's pretty much gone, but not necessarily with the post office. So Brian, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, and thank you to Senator Shaheen's office for inviting me as well. I'll try to go through. I'll try not to repeat too much of what everyone has already said, which are all great points, and we work with all of these agencies and people to try to help combat these frauds. Again, I've been a postal inspector for 17 years. I was in Washington, D.C., and then Boston, and now I'm here in Manchester, New Hampshire. If people don't know, the Postal Inspection Service is what we call the silent service, because not many people know about it, but we're the country's oldest federal law enforcement agency, founded by Ben Franklin back in 1737. We have about 1,300 inspectors in the U.S. So we're federal law enforcement officers. We work with the U.S. Attorney's Office, state attorney's offices, other state, local, and federal agencies to try to prosecute some of these fraudsters. We have roughly 200 federal laws related to the mail that we can enforce, and we just want to ensure the public's confidence in the U.S. mail. The one I want to focus on today is mostly mail fraud, because that's how they're reaching and how they're scamming most of our seniors and our other citizens around the country. Briefly, what mail fraud is a federal crime that charges one or more people in a scheme to devise, or if they intend to devise a scheme, to defraud someone out of money or property by false or fraudulent pretenses or misrepresentation. That usually has to touch the U.S. mail, but it can even be done by private carriers such as UPS, FedEx, and DHL. And the fines can be significant. It's one of the older federal statutes, and each charge can be fined and up to 20 years in prison, and it involves a presidentially declared disaster or emergency. Then it can be up to $1 million and 30 years in prison. I'll try to touch on a couple general frauds that we're seeing that are a big problem, and then also go into some tips to avoid them and how they work. Most people have talked about the COVID-19 scams already. We're seeing stuff that's fake PPE, the personal protective equipment, pretending that the masks, maybe work or don't work. Price gouging in China. Originally, we're trying to really charge high prices for that type of stuff. Miracle drugs or miracle cures that, obviously we hear about it on the news, not through a random email. We need to make sure we're checking this information. Fake charities, as we mentioned, come up where they might mention cancer or heart or Make-A-Wish Foundation. But unless you're checking these very carefully, you might not realize that they're actually a scammer just hoping you send them money. And then obviously fake stimulus checks or, people getting many different stimulus checks that shouldn't be. We also see work-at-home schemes now where people are out of work. It might be tempting to I can stuff envelopes and I can do this, collect different checks from people and send them out. You're really just becoming a cog in the wheel and maybe participating in some money laundering because you can't verify who these people are. The biggest one we see is the foreign lottery and sweepstakes fraud. People, are desperate for a big windfall, and they think you won $10 million, you won $50 million. But they'll say you have to pay for your taxes or the fees in advance. And obviously, you wouldn't have to do that for a real lottery or for sweepstakes. You might actually be involved in the middle of collecting the money and trying to work off what you've lost, or taking it in and sending it back out through the mail. Our postal clerks are very good at helping recognize these, and then we get involved. You'll see the fraudulent health and medical supplies. They may claim to, alleviate or prevent dementia, Alzheimer's, or maintain different body parts or, functions that may decline with age. Obviously, check your credit cards. Now that people are buying a lot more online, that's coming, and, there's a lot more crime going on online now. Government services fraud. You might see something that looks official, as Senator Shaheen mentioned. Now, beware of anything that says final notice or last chance. This is your only time to act. It may look official, but if you look very carefully, there's usually misspellings. There's a wrong logo. There might be a wrong phone number. So do your research. Occasionally, we'll see you'll start receiving unsolicited merchandise that you didn't order, and when you see, then they might want you to pay for that, or then they say, keep some of the money. Sorry for your troubles, but send me the rest of the money I sent you, or send me the rest of the product. And in a way, you're just kind of distancing the real criminal because they're looking at you, not the person probably overseas. And home improvement and home repair frauds. Everyone's home working on their houses now because they can't go anywhere else. So beware of somebody who says they can fix something or pay them up front. They may never come back. We always have our investment scams where you might have an advisor have false periodic statements they send you saying you're making a lot of money. But those could be made up. That might not be your real money. And they're going to keep taking your money and paying the first investors. I end up type of pyramid scam where the money eventually runs out. There's nothing left at the end. And then lastly, sometimes there's fake insurance policies out there. Now maybe people are trying to make sure they have things lined up, and be careful of who you're doing business with, and check out all the resources. So a couple of things that I like to look out for here on the foreign lotteries. Most of them now are coming from overseas, are coming from Jamaica. They do come from other places. So if there's something that just doesn't sound right about maybe someone sounds foreign and some of the information doesn't sound right, then trust your instincts on it. Even playing a foreign lottery is technically illegal. So just keep in mind that not only can you get in trouble, but obviously your money, when you spend it, most likely it's going to be sent overseas. As Brandon and other people have mentioned, we tend to see the older school methods of checks and money orders and actually cash. And I'll give you a couple examples of those, but a lot of people will send cash through the mail, which is never a good idea because we can't trace it and we can't prove that that was your money unless we have a lot of other information. So quickly, I'll go through some techniques they use. We've talked about them. Call you all the time. I'm talking maybe 50 times an hour. Keep you on the phone. They're polite at first and they're friendly because they want to get you to spend money. They might promise the world, expensive vacations, $1 million payout, miracle drugs, something that no one else has ever heard of. And you have to pay a fee up front to win, which is technically going to be illegal. Everybody's mentioned this. If its offer sounds too good to be true, it is. Don't take the chance. You're not the one in a million, okay? Make sure that you're questioning everything. Take your time with these decisions. They'll use, as Brandon had mentioned, high-pressure sales tactics, trying to get you to do something immediately. You're just one of the few eligible people. There's no risk, right? We all know everything's risk, including walking out to get the mail every day, right? There's always something that could happen, so there's never no risk in these investments. They won't show any written information that's detailed. They'll often say, trust me, you won a prize, but you may have to pay for it before you can actually receive the other prizes. You're guaranteed winner, or unrealistic profits, like you can make 300% on your investment. Obviously, if everyone knew that, we'd be out of money in this country. So anything that makes it something that you'd want to click on. So no experience or special skills, high wages. You'll make money if you recruit new people, okay? All these things are too good to be true, and they actually are. And I deal with it multiple times a week, trying to get people their money back. Now, everybody falls for these things, so don't feel guilty. Look for help. We have people in law enforcement, bankers, seniors, teachers, judges, doctors. Everyone falls for these. So make sure you're asking for help and you're checking it. Because once you're hooked, what happens is that they'll sell your information to other fraudsters so they can call you and they can rip you off. If they start becoming threatening, you'll know that maybe this isn't the person I thought it was. I was paying them originally, but now it looks like it's dangerous because they're starting to get mad I'm not paying. They'll always be checking on the status of your payment. How come you haven't mailed it out yet? And they may switch their scheme and then pretend to be the police or someone else, or help you recover the money that you lost, which is really just another scheme. And what they're doing with the money, they're buying, expensive cars, boats. They might be an organized crime or dealing in drugs. So make sure we're not using our money for that. Why do they target seniors? Most of the time, we're more polite and they're more trusting than the younger generation. They're often home to answer the phone. And once they get you on the phone, that's when they tell you to go to the post office and mail out cash, go get a money order, go get Bitcoin, go do something else. You may have saved some money, and they may actually have money as opposed to somebody just starting out. And obviously, they want to help their loved ones or create a nest egg, and it would be helpful if they had extra money. So you might fall for it. Here's some things that might be a tip if you're at risk. Dozens of calls a day. Numerous area codes are calling. Calls from the same unknown person repeatedly. I've been in people's houses where they've called 5 times in 20 minutes while I'm there. Stacks of mail and magazines you don't remember ordering. Sending checks, cash, or money orders to people you haven't met. Almost every single person I talk to has no idea who the person they're sending the money to is. And that's where you know it's not going to be legitimate. Money might be missing from your account, and they're constantly urging for more checks, more cash. It's never enough. Always mailing priority or express mail package at the post office. If you find yourself going and doing that, that's really set up for business. That's how we get most of our information. And as Todd had mentioned, if you send something through the mail, we have a chance to stop it. They'll want you to send it as fast as possible, overnight or 1 or 2 days, because that's less time to stop it. But if you call the Postal Service, call the Postal Inspection Service, let somebody know, we usually can stop it anywhere in the country before it gets to someone's mailbox. Once it's there, it's going to be a lot harder to get it back. Okay, so if you call us right away, we're very good at stopping it. We have people all over the country in every post office that we can call and say, do not deliver that check or that mail. If it's mailed, like I said, call right away. Admit you made a mistake and you need help. If you think you were scammed, call the local police and report it immediately so that we can start working on it. You can always stop the payment on that check, and little things that are free, right? You can change your phone number. Make sure you're listening. Use your caller ID. Let things go to voicemail so that you're not encouraged to talk to them on the phone. And the older generation feels it's impolite to hang up on someone. I'm telling you right now, it's okay. These people just want your money and not your friend, okay? A couple quick war stories, and then I'll finish up here. This is just in New Hampshire. Last year, a woman came into the post office here in Manchester, was mailing out a $22,000 check to someone she had never met. She was coming from a chemo appointment, and she had a cane, and she was sending out $22,000. We were able to stop that check and get it back to her, okay? If there was last month, we had an 86-year-old woman in New Hampshire who mailed out 3 packages via express mail, had $8,000 in cash inside a magazine. 4 days, it took her to lose $24,000. That money we're still trying to help track down and get back. We had a person who mailed 8 express mail packages with over $50,000 to a house in Keene, just a regular house. That's not somebody that you work with or that you know. A Massachusetts man lost over $300,000 of his life savings paying for state, federal, and customs charges on his foreign lottery. That was all made up and not real. That's his whole life savings. And lastly, we had a 75-year-old woman in Washington who was mailing checks into New Hampshire. She's claimed to lose over $800,000 over her life, sending her only remaining $200 to this guy in New Hampshire, saying that, that he was the one that, was going to help her. She literally only had $200 because her family wouldn't talk to her. They were so mad at making these scams that they begged her to stop. They were not talking to her, and her only money for the month for groceries was spent for this scammer. So those are some things you can do to just protect yourself. If these are warning signals, please listen to them, ask for help. You can always shred any of that mail or credit card information. Do not mail cash. It is not able to be tracked. Don't send the money orders or wires to people you don't know. And if you do send something to charity, please check it out. Make sure it's going to the charity and not to a person who represents the company. Like they've all said, take your time. Don't make immediate decisions. Don't give out your personal financial information over the phone, and then get all that information in writing. The resource that we've all talked about, I'll just give mine. www.USPIS, USPostalinspectionService.gov. And our 24-hour number is 877-876-2455. And obviously, you have all these other resources here, too. Remember the thing that everyone's telling you. If it sounds too good to be true, it really is. Thank you for having us, Senator Shaheen, and everybody else on the panel.
Brian, thank you. That's excellent. And I would end up by saying we also, aarp.org/fraud-watch network is another resource. And what we do on our network is we have people sometimes call in, and you can see in real time the scams that are developing nationwide. And we work in close connection with all of these fine folks and the agencies they spoke from. I just want to hit one point, and then I'll turn it over to our fine Senator Shaheen. I think Brian said it. Everybody falls for this. And so, many of you who might be listening to this are from the greatest generation. You're decent, good-hearted people. And because somebody should play on the best attributes of who you are and you fall for that trick because you're a kind-hearted, decent person, you should still try to get help. So in the first case, you hopefully don't fall for the trick. But if you do, make those calls and make them quickly. There's no shame in it. These people are very, very good. I thank you all for your assistance today and for your kind words and your excellent advice. And I turn it back over to Senator Shaheen. And thank you for letting me serve in this role, Senator.
Well, thanks very much, Todd, for doing such a great job. And thank you to Colleen and Brandon, to Brian and Kevin for such great information. And Todd, one of the things that I think people got who tuned in. It's a lot of information that may be difficult to remember. So if they want to replay this, or if they want to get more access to information, where can they go?
Well, we'll try to rebroadcast this on our website if we can, and so it's aarp.org/nh. So that'll be one way to take a look at it, and certainly I don't know if it's going to be on your website, but certainly we can link to it, and it's a great presentation. It's very timely, so happy to put that up there, Senator.
Very helpful, and I think it's going to go out to a lot of senior centers around the state, so hopefully people can see it through their senior center as well. It is a lot of very helpful information, but sometimes if you have additional questions, feel free to call my office. The number there is 603-647-7500. You can also get information by going to my website at shaheen.senate.gov. And again, to everybody who's watching, please listen to what all of our presenters said today. Very helpful information, very important, so none of us get scammed, and take all of the precautions to continue to stay healthy, stay safe, and I know we will all get through this period together. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Todd, and hopefully we will see you soon in person.
Likewise. Thank you, Senator.